Hi guys, it's Isopods and more with me. I hope everything's going well with you and you're taking care of yourselves and the ones you love. The kiddos are at school and I'm going to do something a little different. Normally I record and do voiceovers, but I don't want to do that today. I'm just going to try something a little different, record while I'm doing this, and just go over a little bit of the maintenance that I do with my guys. I always say this is a care video of sorts, but this is not how you should care for your isopods. This is how I care for my guys. A few things before we start. I don't directly spray any of my guys. Sometimes I do a light misting and I may show that. I'm not going to do that now, at least that's not the plan. But what I generally do is, depending on the size of the enclosure and the species, I will drip into different spots, mainly the hydration station though. Water out of a little dropper that I have, and it's usually anywhere between a tablespoon to several tablespoons, again depending on the size. The main reason I do that is to avoid directly spraying the isopods. Not that it doesn't happen in nature, but I just try to avoid it. And additionally, I like to create little pockets of moisture even within the dry side of the enclosures. And I tend to do this by dripping the water onto a leaf or maybe some moss or a piece of wood relatively consistently. And I also have several rocks that I do the same with that tend to, or they seem to, absorb and retain moisture, so much so that, as I mentioned in a few videos, isopods and springtails tend to congregate there, which is kind of neat, even if I put them in the drier side as I tend to do. With all that out of the way, and nothing more to say, let's hop into this. So we're going to start today with my clowns. I only have a handful of these guys, about 10-ish. I enjoy this story because it's neat. I went to a store because a local store that I purchase from occasionally. And I was very new to isopods at the time, so I asked if they had what they had, and they said, oh, there's a guy out. They did say they had Klugii, or Klugii, whichever they said at the time. I don't recall exactly, but my point is, in my head, as I was new, I thought that was Gestroi. So I said, yeah, I'll take what you have, and they didn't ended up having many. But I took what they had and got home and looked and was disappointed, not with them, just that it wasn't what I expected, but it was my mistake and my ignorance, and it was a unfortunate mistake. I love these guys. I didn't call to see if I could have returned them, but I'm sure this place would have let me. They're very understanding. But I didn't. I kept them, and I love it. So I tend to, as I mentioned, hydrate this moist side pretty heavily. I'm going to go actually a little heavier than I normally do, as it has been 2 days since I opened this. And I normally open it every day just so I at least check, give a peek, get a little bit of fresh air in, because I like to look sometimes. So after I'm done doing that, drop a little more there. I'll reload my water a little bit, and then I'll just, as I mentioned, in this one specific, once I move this big leaf, this magnolia leaf back, cover my guy up over there. For here, in fact, I'm going to move it back. I love how active they can be. I tend to drop in this couple of these little pockets here because it will retain and then absorb in. And these guys are really active. They knocked this. This has been up here for a while. I'm surprised they got it down. I'm sure it will go again. I'm going to go and fill this little thing I used, but while I'm doing that, keep your eyes to that right side. Those are those, at least there are a couple different kinds of rocks that I'm going to pull up in a minute actually before I want to be careful, but because there's two kinds and I'm not sure where I got them. They may even be the same kind of rock from the same container, just different types. But I love the texture on this rock. You can see it. What I tend to do is, and I'll probably do it, I drip water on one, and it's usually this one here, because it is not as textured where I have it. But this one retains water very well, so I'll usually drip several drops on there when I go through and hydrate. The other rock, this one here that I was showing, as I mentioned, I will drop, where are you at? The morning wood powder in there, and I'll kind of tap it down in there a little bit with a brush, get it in the pockets as well as I can. And again, I enjoy watching the springtails, and not so much in this one because they're all more mature, but they will dig in there and kind of actively get it out. It's kind of neat. But in, for example, my zebra enclosure with these rocks, it's cool because you'll see the smaller isopods actually going into the smaller ones and eating in there. It's kind of cool. Drop a little more water. In this one, I tend to always drop 3 or 4 in there. And on this magnolia leaf also. So we'll do 1 drop. I just want to let you kind of watch it absorb. I'll usually hit that moss a little bit around it. And I'll do this one this time, because I'm going to drop the food in the other one. I apologize if my voice trails off from the mic as I move around. I try to consistently speak when I'm close, but I'm new to doing this, and as I say, I'm not that smart, so I'm learning. And as you can see, the water on the more porous rock above by the eggshell, it's still not even absorbed, while the one below it, that more smooth rock, it's already all gone and absorbed into it. I'm going to actually put a few more drops when I'm done, but I want to tap that Rapashy down real quick, show you what I'm talking about. And if I want to get real crazy, I'll do both. I'll water it and then kind of mush it down in there. And I know that's not good to add the moisture, but I do it in the tanks where they're a little better at eating it. I know it's going to be gone and not mold over. And even if it is a smaller population, for example, in my Gestrois, the springtail population is so active that even if it does mold, I don't mind as much in that particular enclosure because it's just more food for them and they keep it in check. It's not something that gets out of control. Now I did go down to the food pantry and got butternut squash, which was expired, and old me would have thrown that out, but my Isopods and me knows that regardless of that, they will eat it. I have been soaking it in some water just to make sure any kind of impurities come out or anything like that, just to make sure. Let me look for a spot to drop this. I'll put it on. Maybe I'll get a smaller piece for these guys. Drop it on that rock there. And that is about it for these guys. I'm going to put them away and get moving on the next one, but this is that time where I just kind of stare and wait to see what happens or if I catch anything. But as I'm doing this recording, now is not that time. Goodbye, clowns. So these are my wild-caught Spinicornis, mainly Spinicornis. I still think there's probably some Oniscus ocelluses in there, but we will see eventually. This is a wild-caught colony that I recently split. I'm sorry, my eyes are being caught by the springtails. I'm always looking for activity. And we'll actually go through that new enclosure now. I think this one will likely remain more active and visually so, in that there are still more in here and it's a smaller enclosure, so they're more in constant contact. But I took out individuals that were just more, I see those little antennae, man, that's awesome, that were more expressive in terms of their color, and I'm going to try to get a third enclosure going where I can maybe start to isolate the young that exhibit those traits and focus more on that. So the left side, as we're looking, is the moist side. You can see it's kind of moist. The darker soil is a good indicator of that. I don't want to flip. I'm not doing that today. I kind of want to. I'm getting a little eager though. So let's start with my watering first. I always try to get that out of the way. The exception is if I'm misting, I do that. I actually, and that's one thing I kind of wanted to say, I won't mist on days that I'm feeding because it gets everything moist, even food that I have out. So if I put out the fish flakes or anything like that and then spray or put it out on top of, after I sprayed, it tends to be exceptionally moist and mold over, and I try to avoid that. So if I do a misting, it's on an off day where I'm not doing anything else, and I'll only mist if I don't see many, if any, out and about. I'm sorry, that guy caught my attention. It looked like he was about to molt. So let's continue that. In this one specific, you'll notice right now I'm going to tend to, I leave more of a trail. I let the moisture go a little bit further down into the enclosure, the substrate I should say. And I use these leaves and mosses to help retain moisture and keep it damp. That's about all I'm going to do on that in terms of the hydration station. Now I'm going to find some of my odd spots. You may see the top exposed piece of wood is a little bit darker, as I will tend to drip some wood here, or drip some water there. I can't be dripping wood. Where else should I drop some? I want to get this. This is actually a new piece of wood, and it's decayed very well. It's what I harvested outside from the forest near my apartment. Oh, you couldn't see a little guy running around in there. Bummer. Let's go there a little bit. And that should be good. Get them there. Squash. Drop some Rapashy in there. I did mean to actually do fish flakes, but now that I'm kind of already past that for some, I'm going to continue on. Let's drop this in there. Again, I do try to keep those smooth rocks in there. You'll generally see me put food on for that reason. It doesn't touch the substrate, doesn't make it too moist, and it's easier to keep track of. However, I am eager to get actual dishes or maybe shells or something that's concave, because these guys are aggressive and rather strong, and these pieces will potentially be moved, more so once they lose a little bit of their water weight. They have a tendency to try to pull them where they want them. So you can often leave them on a rock like that. I do it with my dried shrimp all the time, where I do leave it in a place like that, and I will find it under a rock or someplace like that if it's still there and they didn't eat it. But I tend to make sure when I do things like leave shrimp or smaller pieces, maybe a pea, for example, or a small piece of lettuce, when I'm done cleaning up the food, I do take a moment to look around, maybe flip some things and make sure that didn't get pulled, if that's a potential issue in that tank. But as mentioned, in some, I don't mind that at all because of the active springtail or active isopod, or a combination of both populations. Let's get this Rapashy going and then hop into the other spinnies. Where am I going to drop this today? I do try to use food as a way to motivate them to explore, get out a little bit more, depending on the colony. I usually have one main part which is occupied today by butternut squash, so let's drop some on there. Ooh, and I know, as I mentioned, since I did want them to go in that new piece, let's put it in a position where hopefully it drops down in there a little bit too. Goes deeper down in there. And one thing I often like to do is, once you get it all off, just give a little tap in that powder. Let that go wherever it goes. Alrighty. We got that Rapashy. We got the water. They got their squash. I think we're good. I was debating doing the shrimp today too, but I don't want to overfeed. In fact, if I get to my zebras, I may do that because they're a more voracious group of guys and gals. There's one. Are you coming out, or are we going to go? I don't know if you can see this guy about there. Oh, I like that idea, using the paintbrush to specifically point things out. No, he's not coming out, but he's right there. I'm going to wait one more moment before I wrap this up. and hop into the bigger, less populated Spinny Binny. Yeah, he went away. All right, let's do this. This one may be a little more difficult. So let's see. I'm trying not to smack the camera. Apologize for the setup. And additionally, no one really out and about today. Sorry, I'm trying to get that as best I can. I apologize. In fact, actually, let's see. I can make that magic happen. Alrighty, so this is that new Spinicornis bin of mine. I love it in the capacity of a lot of this is stuff I harvested. The moss right in that center there is a big old slab. I caught the wood in the bottom part right here. I forgot I can actually, yeah, let me get my green thing going. So I harvested this wood, this moss, this wood, this wood, this wood, and there's a big mosquito hawk. Yeah, I was not expecting that. Sorry. So that makes me happy. I do want to get to the point where I start to harvest my own leaves, but that day is not today, as I always say, until I do. But I don't see any out and about. So let's get right down to the watering and the feeding. I do need to get a little better of a system for this water. Tend to find something I can do proficiently and stick to it. So here, again, the left side is the moist side. So I'm gonna pour some along here, or drip as I should say. And I'm gonna drip it there because I like to, again, let the moisture linger. I don't know how well you can see, but this leaf has this wood resting on top of it, and there's substrate beneath it. So again, that's one of those spots that's going to remain very moist, where if an isopod does need to do something like that, they can help regulate themselves. I do have it more moist towards this side. I would, if I could visualize it, if I could split it this way, this side tends to be more moist, even though I do moisten this side a tad bit. And I usually do that by dripping it down this leaf and letting it run, and then dropping it in this little pocket here. Drip some on the wood and get myself a refill. By the way, if you're listening to this, let me know how you are doing today. Are you excited for the holidays? How's the weather? Are you excited for that? I myself am a snow guy, and I can't wait for the snow to get here, but I know most people don't like to hear that. But I hope, again, everything's going well with you. Weather is optimal, and if not, your attitude is optimal. But let's get this water going. A couple more in the wood here, and I do like to keep this little moisture bridge, if I could call it that, going across. And then I'll drop some. Again, I want to keep more moisture zones. I like to actually kind of introduce new ones every once in a while, just like if a rain came by or it was maybe a very foggy morning. I am about... Oh no, I needed to do the Rapashy still. And their squash. Goodness gracious. Ooh, and... There I go. I wanted to show again. This is here on the more dry side. And this is one of those rocks that tends to retain that moisture, get that going. And I also will do little smaller pieces of food there. I don't mind if it contacts the substrate a little bit there. Or I'm sorry, not the substrate in that case, the wood, but that's fine. And we'll drop that one on there. Oh, I'm going to turn it, maybe see if I can leave area underneath for them. Yeah, there we go. Fill this water while I'm here. And then move on. And I don't know where I'm going from here, but we'll find out when we get there. I don't want to put too much in these guys as they're not established at all. A little there. No one's coming out to play today. But that is why God invented tomorrow. So let's go. As someone who loves going out walking in the woods, sitting, relaxing. Sometimes I almost fall asleep out there. And I hope you can hear me and I'm not talking to myself. I love the smell. That's one interesting dynamic that's a little bit different about the winter is the smell is not as pronounced or dynamic or pungent, whatever the term would be. But, get this. These are my canyon giants, as I call them, or giant canyon isopods, which is boring. So one of my favorite things to do is, I just realized that almost looks like a face aside from, maybe it has a third eye. But, just open them up, and if everything's in balance, you just... Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It makes my soul tingle. And again, the best part about doing that is one time I had a mold issue. And in doing that, I realized very quickly that I had a mold issue. Because the smell was off. But if everything is in order, oh man, that smell, just I say, it resonates within my soul when I do that. In recording, I don't do it as often. I don't like sticking my face there. And it's just a little different. But that's one of my routines or whatever you want to say. These guys actually, just for a little bit of context again, giant canyon isopods or canyon giants are they have a propensity for digging and burrow a lot more than most other species. And so you'll rarely see them, but also this has the moist side on the right where that red rock is. And I'm going to go ahead and drop what was in there. They do tend to frequent this area right here. It's very airy and the moss kept it very porous, and they tend to enjoy that a lot. It keeps the substrate very loose, easier for them to either retreat to or get out of and navigate. Get some down in the back. I want to do a video about the fact that sphagnum moss is an excellent conductor of water and how I use that specifically in my African fat-tailed gecko's enclosure to help keep isopods alive, but how you can also do it just to have a little bit more fun and flexibility with enclosures or, let's say, little iso homes like these. A little more. We got the moist side pretty well. And find a little rando spot. Where these pieces of wood, let me grab my pointer, where this piece of wood contacts this down here, I like to drop. Again, it retains a little bit of moisture, but dropping it here also helps guide the water down, as this piece of wood here goes down vertically, almost if not all the way down to the bottom. I may have just had a small layer of substrate above it as not to have it directly contact the plastic, but that goes all the way down, and if I'm not mistaken, it goes at an angle to about right here down below, almost like this. So I like that. Again, it creates little micro environments. It is the term I believe Russ of Aquarimax uses, and I've heard before. I used microcosm as was the term I used, but micro environment. It creates, for example, if I were to today, which I'm not doing, drip more moisture down here, it would, in this area, create a pocket of moisture more so than the surrounding area, where that allows, if a isopod has a preference or if it's molting or anything like that, it allows them to find that even in places where it's a little bit further away from what it would traditionally get in the hydration station. I think we're done with the water, and I think I'm done blabbering. Let's get some Rapashy going and get their butternut out. Gonna put the butternut on that eggshell, I think. Let's grab a little piece for there. Just don't want you on the substrate. There you go. Find a little bigger of a piece to put mainly on there. I think it's gonna fall, but oh well. A little bit of mold never hurt anybody in that enclosure. I think we're about done. Not visible, but man, I love these guys. Oh. Can't see, but we got one poking around right here. Come on, make yourself famous, guy. Oh. The not so shy canyon giant. He's got some nice color too. Goodness, yeah, come out. Let us see you. I don't want to move the camera so much. I hope you can see him a little bit. Yeah, I can see him. Oh, he has some wonderful color. It almost looks like a very brightly colored Porcellio scaber lava. Oh no. That's alright, guy. You did great. Go get some food, find a drink, and find a spot to relax, because we are going to move on to the next one. Where are you at? What is it going to be next? I do think I'm going to save the zebras for last. You guys there for now. I'm going to put you back. Yeah, let's do my little guys, because you are out. Oh, you still are out. I may not give you some squash then. We will see. These guys I need to give so much more love to. Well, not quite the opposite. I give them a lot of love. I need to find these guys some more friends. This is my smaller enclosure. This is my group of, I believe it's high white, but maybe I believe what people call champagne zebras, where they are more lightly colored white than the traditional stronger patterned black and off-white of the normal zebra. So let's get some water. A lot of springtails in this moss. I don't know if you can see it that well. I don't know if I said this, and if not, good for me. If so, I'm getting old and I blame that. In the moisture zone where I put the sphagnum moss, I tend to put a lot of charcoal chunks, as that's going to remain a moist environment. And springtails use charcoal to reproduce, or it seems they're, I don't know if preferable or optimal, which of those it is, but they gravitate towards it. So that combined with the moisture keeps them having a little micro environment of sorts where they can find that moisture that they want and need and prefer to breed. So it's, as they say, getting two birds stoned at once. Put a few more drops in here. Where do I want to go? But I do want to get these guys, if I can find a trading network or something like that, or money to get them, I want to get these guys up so bad. I almost feel bad. Not that, I'm sure they don't mind. They'd probably like the room. Put a little more on this side. Yeah, I think we're about good. Let's get some food going for these bubbas. They do have that little carrot off to the left, so I'm not going to put too much. Let's check that carrot out. Seeing if we see any mankai, which I doubt, but they tend to gravitate on carrots for their moisture. Well, can I find a small enough piece? If not, I'll make one. I'll give them a little piece. Drop it on there. And get that morning wood out. Oops, I was actually going to put it where I put the butternut, but so I'll just drop it there, sprinkle there, and I tried to put a little on there. Alrighty. So these guys look about done. There's 4 in here, and as I mentioned, I usually see 2. I often see 3 and almost never see the 4th one. So much so that when I moved them into this, when I was going through the substrate, I thought there were only 3, and then I lost him, but found him when I was going through the entire length of substrate. So just a little word to the wise, always go through every ounce of substrate. And that was very unusual for a zebra, because they tend not to burrow, but I guess I got one that's the misfit of the bunch. I do love this container because it's clear. I want to get a larger version of this eventually. you guys back up. These are my little Wolverine Isopods, as I call them, or Armadilidium Gestroi, as normal people call them. Get this going. Alrighty. To the right, where that big magnolia leaf is, if there's not, because I'm not looking right now, you may see a bunch of springtails, and if you don't yet, give me one moment, because this, I don't know what I did, but the springtails in here, love it. Ready for this? Oh, and that's actually a slow day. Normally I see a lot more there. So maybe I'll moisten it, or maybe it's because I moved the moisture level a little. I usually put that there, let that rest. These guys I pretty heavily moisten the moist side and almost never put anything on the, I would say, past about this part of the moss. I never go any further that way, but I will show you what I do in the stead. As soon as I fill this water again, a little go in there. This is one of those red moist rocks that normally I keep in the dry side, but when I first put this together, it ended up there. Now I'm just going to leave it. And I like to moisten. I do have the moss right here. Again, 2 pieces of decent sized charcoal right towards the top. There's a third one there, and again I have it going pretty deep in there, which I believe is why the springtails are so active here. And then drop you back here. A little more water in my dripper. So what I often do, and I do this to a higher degree, I guess, with my zebras, is here on the dry side, I do create, again, what you could call a micro environment. Very small one, but on the top of this wood, I will drip water, but it also has, I don't know how well it comes out here, a hole here and here, where some will sometimes go down there. Again, not so much so that it becomes a moist environment. It'll dry up within a few minutes, at the very least, at the end of the day, but I do tend to drop it here and in here. The front area is here. And again, it's not going to bleed down to the bottom, but it will create a little bit of moisture so they can just come up there and have access to that if they need. And I am actually this time going to put a little bit on that moss. Oh, I want to say this is one of those proud moments, because this little bare piece of wood, this surface was covered with moss, and it's something that over time these Gestroi have just destroyed and removed. As far as I can see, there's a little bit of maybe dead moss here, but they pretty much took all of it, which is awesome. Oh, I don't know if I blocked him. Did you see that? There we go. And just like that. Also, I do love leaves like this. I don't know how well it comes out. I'm not going to move it now. But this is one of those, it's a curled leaf that winds up within itself. And I like to put substrate in there, pack it in before I put it in, and then when I drop water around there, it retains moisture a little better again. And the last thing I do in terms of water with these guys is put a couple, half a dozen drops on the top of that leaf. Some morning wood. Where will I be putting this today? That's too much. Let's put some in there. There. I'm going to put a little bit in and around there. And where do they want their squash? They are almost always in here, sometimes in here and here. So let's put that, let's put a bigger piece. Good enough. And again, this is one of those where, while my isopods will not eat that, I know that if I keep it in there for 2 days, then it normally would get moldy. The springtails in here just destroy it. It's awesome. All right, I think we're about done here. So let's put you guys away. Yep, I got it. I do want to start putting a lot more leaf litter in my bins, as I'm always chasing the leaf dragon, so to speak. As I mentioned, I have to purchase them, and that costs money, and I'm not confident enough yet to be pulling these out from the wild, as I don't want to end up introducing anything that could put my guys at risk. But I do want to start doing that. A lot more leaf litter. These are my, what I think are predominantly Trachelipus Rathkii, or as I call them, Dothraki. Oh, actually, no, that's, as I say that, it looks like a little spinny right there. But these are all wild caught. What happened was I was out on a walk and tripped over a log, and it was cold again. I think it was 40 out, where I think these guys would have froze. So I went and collected them up, as I didn't want to be responsible for that. And here we are again. So I didn't kind of care what I was picking up at the time. It just looked like most of them were either those the Dothraki, as I call them, or, as I mentioned previously, Porcellio scaber, because they have very similar looks externally and initially. So I have to go through this, and that's why it's in a smaller container. There's actually quite a few in there. If I had to guess, closer to 20. I just want to take the time to adequately go through there and isolate each individual species. So that is another pet project in the future. You know them, you love them, you probably have your own. But these zebras are mine. There are many like them, but these are mine. Let me know if you get that reference. Again, I can't zoom out much more or do much more with that. I apologize. I mean, let me try one thing. There we go. That'll help. Alrighty. So, left side, I forgot to mention this in quite a few, is actually the moist side. The right side is the dry side. This is where you'll see in a moment I'm going to start getting that ready. I'm going to end up moistening the left side more heavily, very heavy, as this is a larger enclosure. But with that, you will see me moisten specifically. I'm wondering how well it will show up here. I don't know if it will, but there's right here, there's a little bit of green moss. I stuck through, there's a hole drilled in there, and I drip water there. I'll do that part now, actually. Why not? I'll drip anywhere from 5 to 10 drops, and that actually pulls through to the other side, and again, puts just a little bit of moisture in there, which is awesome. I've seen quite a few guys sitting right around that spot. 2 times specific, I've seen them molting at that spot. And then this piece, this piece, this piece, this, specifically are wild caught, but I'm very happy because this piece and these 2 here, more specific, I'll catch everything from, I don't want to flip, but let's see. I often catch juvenile, and I mean very small juveniles, almost mankai, if not. Oh, there we go, look. And they're just crushing this wood. Oh my goodness, there's a lot. Sorry guys, I didn't know. Put you back, let you do your thing. I apologize. So yeah, they love that wood. Whew, I want to find out what it is, because I mean, I know in terms of out there where it is, what it is, but I don't know what kind of wood it is. But they love it. All 3 of these pieces, that I'll catch them just all day grazing. It's beautiful. Then this is one of those texture. Did I already get that one wet? It looks like it. So I'll do it with this one today. Let me finish my water. This cork, where's my pointer brush? Similar to I believe it's Canyon Giants, this piece of cork bark is a tube and goes all the way down to about right here in terms of when it goes down to the bottom, and does similarly go all the way down, if not to the bottom of the substrate. So it creates a nice long path. I do have substrate wood leaves packed in there. I drop, as you will see, water usually along. I'll drip it here and kind of either let it roll down, soak up into the moss, but I don't drip it down there. And then I'll drip it again, as I do in other ones, along there to kind of make contact with the other wood, and also what does go down will hopefully go down into the substrate, adding layers of moisture, not just one uniform level. As I mentioned, I'll usually just kind of drop it here, let some of it run down, some of it will gather there. I did just do a good job moistening the side, so I don't want to do too much, but and I don't know how well it appears. Where is that? Okay, so not very well, but this is a leaf stem here that of a magnolia leaf that actually, again, goes all the way down to the substrate, and what I will do is usually put anywhere from 5 to 15 drops there, knowing it will travel, and use that to go down to the, lower in the substrate. I'm very nervous about how this audio is going to sound, because if I talked and did all this for nothing, it's a waste. But then again, I'm just going to have to go over and do the voice myself, as I did prior, but I'm hoping that's not the case. And one thing I do in here is this leaf here. You can see the dirt on there on the substrate, the substrate on the leaf. I will put food there often, the Rapashy or a couple of fish flakes, again to promote activity there. But I like to do that because it will absorb into that, also into the leaf. And same thing, this is one of those curled leaves I like to just kind of drop in there. I think that's about it for this in terms of moisture. I keep these guys pretty good. Yeah, let's moisten this one up. This one is another one I like to moisten up, and then I'll mush the Rapashy really good into. That's not one of the more absorbent ones. Alright, yeah, let's use the last of this. Alright. I already got a bunch of springtails on here. And I'm going to put it more in the middle. And put that there. And we'll put this one. Get that Rapashy out, and we are just about done. And then I'll usually, as mentioned, drop some right around the top there. It'll fall in and out and around it. And I wanted to drop. There were lots of Menkai here before, and obviously right there. They love that wood. That's awesome. So, I hope everything's going well with you. You're taking care of yourselves and the ones you love. If you've made it this far, thank you. And I appreciate it. And I hope you appreciated this little maintenance day with me. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the ones you love. Thank you. And maybe leave a like, a sub, and leave a comment below. Go easy.